The velvet box hit the bottom of the industrial trash can with a heavy, final thud, echoing through the silent kitchen of the Gilded Lily. Just seconds before, that box had represented a threat, a ghost from a past that refused to stay buried. But now, it was nothing more than garbage. A large hand, adorned with a heavy gold signet ring, rested on the stainless steel counter, the knuckles white with suppressed rage. Ivy Sullivan stopped breathing as the man beside her turned, his eyes dark and dangerous. He didn't yell, he didn't make a scene. Leonard Vitti simply leaned in, his voice a low, terrifying rumble that vibrated against her ribs. "You are mine, Ivy," he whispered, the possessiveness thick enough to choke on. "And from this moment on, you only accept gifts from me." Snow didn't fall gently in Chicago. It attacked the city, turning the streets into slushy grey rivers and the sidewalks into treacherous sheets of ice. But inside the Gilded Lily, one of the city's most exclusive supper clubs, the weather was merely a scenic backdrop. The air here smelled of expensive pine, roasting duck, and the distinct metallic tang of old money. Ivy Sullivan adjusted her apron, wincing slightly as the stiff fabric rubbed against the bruise on her hip, a souvenir from slipping on the icy steps of her apartment building that morning. She checked her reflection in the brass siding of the espresso machine. Tired hazel eyes stared back. She was 26, but tonight she felt 40. "Table 4 needs a refill on the Barolo, Ivy," the floor manager, a nervous man named Arthur, hissed as he speed-walked past her. "And smile, for God's sake. It's Christmas Eve." "On it, Arthur," Ivy murmured. She moved through the dining room with the practiced grace of someone who had been invisible for years. Ivy was good at her job because she knew how to disappear. She knew how to place a glass down without a sound, how to anticipate a request before it was spoken, and how to ignore the wandering hands of drunk businessmen. But there was one table where she couldn't be invisible. Table 1. The booth in the far corner, shrouded in shadows, possessing the best vantage point of the entire room. Leonard Vitti sat there. He wasn't eating. He rarely ate. He had an espresso in front of him, black, and a tumbler of amber liquid that he hadn't touched in 20 minutes. Leonard was a man who took up space, even when he was sitting perfectly still. He was broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than Ivy's tuition debt. His face was all hard angles and dark stubble, with eyes that were black, intelligent, and currently fixed on the front door. Ivy approached table 4, poured the wine, and felt the weight of a gaze on her back. She didn't turn around. She knew it was him. Leonard Vitti came in every Tuesday and Friday. Tonight was Tuesday. He never spoke to her beyond ordering his drink, but his presence was a physical weight, a magnetic field that made the hair on her arms stand up. The front door chimed. A gust of freezing wind cut through the warmth of the restaurant as a courier stepped inside. He looked out of place in his blue windbreaker, shaking snow off his boots. He scanned the room, looking lost until he spotted Arthur. They exchanged words. Arthur pointed toward the kitchen, then paused, shook his head, and pointed at Ivy. Ivy's stomach dropped. Couriers didn't come here for staff. "Ivy!" Arthur waved her over, looking annoyed. "This guy insists he has a priority package for you. Make it quick. We're in the middle of a rush." She walked over, wiping her hands on her apron. "For me?" "Ivy Sullivan," the courier asked, chewing gum. "Sign here." He shoved a digital pad at her. She scribbled her signature, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. He handed her a box. It wasn't a small, modest package. It was a bright red box wrapped in metallic paper, topped with a massive gold bow. It was loud, it was gaudy. It screamed for attention in the muted elegance of the restaurant. Ivy felt the blood drain from her face. She knew that wrapping paper. She knew the excessive use of tape. "No," she whispered. She retreated to the server's station, a small alcove near the kitchen doors, hoping to hide the offensive object. Her hands trembled as she found the card tucked under the ribbon. "To my Ivy, I know things ended rough. But I've changed. I hit it big, babe. Crypto, I can take care of you now. Open it. Wear it. I'll be watching. Merry Christmas. Brad Halloway." The name brought a vile taste of bile to her throat. Brad, who had stolen her savings 2 years ago. Brad, who had gambled away her rent money and left her to face the landlord alone. Brad, who had disappeared when the loan sharks came knocking, leaving Ivy to work 3 jobs to pay off debts that weren't hers. She stared at the box. "I'll be watching." A chill that had nothing to do with the snow outside swept over her. She looked up, scanning the crowded restaurant. Was he here? Was he outside, pressing his face against the glass? She didn't notice that the entire restaurant had gone quiet. She didn't notice that table 1 was empty. The box felt radioactive in her hands. She needed to get rid of it. She needed to burn it. "Is there a problem, Ivy?" The voice came from directly behind her. It wasn't Arthur's high-pitched nagging. It was a baritone rumble, smooth like aged whiskey and dangerous like a loaded gun. Ivy spun around, nearly dropping the box. Leonard Vitti stood inches from her. Up close, he was overwhelming. He smelled of sandalwood, expensive tobacco and rain. He towered over her, his dark eyes scanning her face, noting the fear in her eyes, the trembling of her hands, and finally, the gaudy red box. "Mr. Vitti," Ivy stammered. I'm sorry, I was just getting back to work." Leonard didn't move. He blocked the exit from the server's station, creating a private world in the middle of the bustling room. "You're shaking," he observed. He didn't ask. He stated it as a fact. His eyes drifted to the card she was still clutching. Before she could pull it away, he reached out. His hand was large, his fingers long and calloused. He plucked the card from her fingers with a delicacy that contradicted his size. "Mr. Vitti, please, it's personal." He read it. His expression didn't change, but the air around him seemed to drop 10 degrees. The jaw muscle ticked once. "Brad," Leonard said the name, as if he were tasting something rotten. "The ex-boyfriend, the one who left you with $40,000 in debt to the North Side Syndicate." Ivy froze. How do you know that?" Leonard looked at her then, really looked at her. "I know everything about you, Ivy. I know you live on 4th Street. I know you take your coffee with 2 sugars. I know you work here, at the diner on weekends, and freelance edit on Mondays. It should have been terrifying. It was terrifying. But the way he said it, there was no malice. There was only an intense, consuming focus. He looked at the red box. "Open it." "What?" "Open the box, Ivy. I don't want it. I don't want anything from him." "Open it," Leonard commanded softly. "Let's see what a man who sells his soul for crypto thinks you are worth." Her hands shaking, Ivy tore the paper. Inside was a black velvet jewelry box. She flipped the lid. Sitting on the cushion was a necklace. It was gold, or at least gold-plated. A heart-shaped pendant encrusted with stones that were too big, too bright, and obviously cubic zirconia. It was tacky, it was cheap, but worse, it was a claim. Leonard stared at the necklace. A low, dark laugh escaped his throat. It was a terrifying sound. "Garbage," he said. He reached out and took the box from her hands. "Mr. Vitti, you can't—" He didn't listen. He turned and walked toward the kitchen. Ivy scrambled to follow him, her heart in her throat. The kitchen staff froze as Leonard Vitti walked in. The chefs stopped chopping, the dishwashers stopped scrubbing. This man owned the building. He owned half the block. Leonard walked to the large industrial trash can near the prep station. He didn't just drop the necklace in. He held it over the bin, looking at it with pure contempt. "He thinks he can buy you back with plated gold and glass," Leonard murmured, more to himself than to her. He dropped the box. Thud. He turned to Ivy. The kitchen was dead silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. He stepped closer, invading her personal space, forcing her to look up at him. He reached out, his thumb grazing her cheekbone, wiping away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "You are not a consolation prize for a gambler, Ivy," Leonard said, his voice low and fierce. "You don't accept trash, and you don't accept apologies wrapped in foil." He leaned down, his lips brushing her ear. "From now on, you only accept gifts from me." Ivy's breath hitched. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care?" Leonard pulled back, his dark eyes locking onto hers. "Because, Tesoro, I've been waiting for you to realize you're a queen, not a servant, and I kill anyone who disrespects a queen." The rest of the shift was a blur. Leonard returned to table 1, but he didn't drink. He watched. He watched the door. He watched the windows. He watched her. Ivy felt like she was walking on a wire. The fear of Brad was still there, lurking in the back of her mind, but it was now warring with a confusing, electric heat that Leonard's touch had ignited. At 11:30 p.m., the restaurant began to clear out. The snow had turned into a blizzard. Ivy changed into her thick coat and wrapped a scarf around her neck. She said goodnight to Arthur, who was busy counting the till, and pushed open the back door into the alleyway. It was a short cut to the train station, usually safe enough, though tonight the shadows seemed longer than usual. She took 3 steps and stopped. A figure was leaning against the brick wall, smoking a cigarette. The cherry of the smoke glowed bright red in the darkness. "You didn't wear the necklace," a voice said. Ivy's blood turned to ice. She knew that voice, the whiny, arrogant tilt to the vowels. Brad Halloway stepped into the light of the single flickering street lamp. He looked different than she remembered. His suit was flashy, a bright blue that looked ridiculous in the winter gloom. He had capped his teeth. They were blindingly white when he smiled. "Hello, Ivy." "Brad," she managed to say, clutching her purse strap. "Go away." Is that any way to greet the man who's trying to spoil you? He flicked the cigarette into the snow. "I saw the delivery guy go in. I know you got it. That was a $2,000 piece, babe." "It was fake, Brad. Just like you," Ivy snapped, surprised by her own boldness. Maybe it was the residual adrenaline from Leonard. Brad's smile faltered. His eyes narrowed. "You've got a mouth on you now. I like it." He took a step toward her. "Look, I know I messed up. But I'm flush now. I can pay off your little debts. I can move you into a penthouse. But you gotta stop playing hard to get." "I paid my debts," Ivy hissed, stepping back. "I worked 3 jobs for 2 years to clean up your mess. I don't owe you anything. And I definitely don't want you." Brad's face twisted. The nice guy facade dropped instantly. He lunged forward, grabbing her wrist. "You listen to me, you ungrateful little—" "Let go of me!" Ivy screamed, struggling against his grip. "You think you're better than me?" Brad snarled, yanking her closer. "You're a waitress! You're nothing without me!" Suddenly, high beams flooded the alleyway, blinding them both. A sleek black SUV roared down the narrow passage, tires crunching over the snow, stopping just inches from them. The doors flew open. 2 men in dark coats stepped out. They were huge, built like linebackers. But it was the man who stepped out of the back seat who made the air leave the alleyway. Leonard Vitti emerged into the snow. He wasn't wearing an overcoat, just his suit, seemingly immune to the cold. He adjusted his cufflinks, looking bored. "Let her go," Leonard said. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. Brad squinted into the light, still holding Ivy's wrist. "Who the hell are you? This is a private conversation, pal. Get back in your car." One of Leonard's bodyguards, a man with a scar running down his cheek, named Rocco, chuckled darkly. Leonard sighed. He walked forward, the snow crunching under his Italian leather shoes. Brad Halloway, born in Ohio, failed real estate license, failed crypto exchange, currently laundering money for the East Side triads, and doing a very poor job of it. Brad froze. He released Ivy's wrist as if it burned him. "How? Who are you?" Leonard stepped between Ivy and Brad, shielding her completely. He looked down at Brad with the indifference of a boot regarding an ant. "I am the man who owns the pavement you are standing on," Leonard said. "I am the man who owns the debt you think you paid off. And I am the man who is going to peel the skin off your bones if you ever touch her again." Brad stumbled back, his bravado crumbling. He recognized the face now. Everyone in Chicago knew the face of the Vitti crime family boss, even if they pretended they didn't. "Mr. Vitti," Brad squeaked. I didn't know. She's my ex. I was just—" "She's nothing to you," Leonard cut him off. "She's not your ex. She's not your past. She's a stranger to you. If you say her name, if you write it down, if you even think about her in the privacy of your own mind, I will know, and I will come for you." Leonard turned his back on Brad, dismissing him as a threat. He looked at Ivy. She was shivering, adrenaline crashing hard. "Get in the car, Ivy," Leonard said softly. "I can take the train," she whispered, though her legs felt like jelly. "There are no trains where you are going," Leonard said. He took off his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders. It was heavy, warm, and smelled of him. "You're done with the cold." Behind them, Rocco stepped toward Brad. "Start running, kid. The boss gave you a head start." As Ivy climbed into the warm leather interior of the SUV, she watched through the tinted glass. She saw Brad sprinting down the alleyway, slipping in the snow, looking back in terror. Leonard slid in beside her. The door closed, shutting out the wind, the city, and her past. "Where are we going?" Ivy asked, pulling his jacket tighter around herself. Leonard poured a glass of water from a crystal decanter built into the console and handed it to her. "Home," he said. "My home, because it's clear yours isn't safe anymore." "I can't just go with you. I don't know you." Leonard looked at her, his eyes softening for the first time that night. "You know me, Ivy. I'm the man who sat at table 1 for 6 months, just to make sure you were safe during your shift. I'm the man who bought the building your apartment is in last week, so I could fix the heating you complained about to your manager." Ivy's jaw dropped. You fix the heat?" "I take care of what is mine," Leonard said, leaning back as the car began to move. "And we have a lot to discuss." The drive took 40 minutes. They left the slush-filled streets of downtown Chicago behind, heading north toward the affluent, silent suburbs of Lake Forest. The car turned off the main road onto a private drive, winding through a forest of dense oaks that blocked out the moonlight. Finally, the trees cleared, revealing a massive estate that looked more like a fortress than a home. High stone walls topped with wrought iron spikes surrounded the perimeter. A heavy steel gate groaned open as the SUV approached, flanked by security cameras that tracked their movement with blinking red eyes. "This is where you live?" Ivy whispered, peering out the window. The house was a sprawling manor of grey stone, dark and imposing against the night sky. "This is where we are safe," Leonard corrected. The car stopped in a circular driveway. Rocco opened the door, the cold air biting at Ivy's exposed legs, but Leonard was there instantly, his arm around her waist, guiding her up the stone steps. The front doors were double-height mahogany, opening automatically as they approached. Inside, the house was warm, silent, and terrifyingly grand. The foyer had marble floors that reflected a crystal chandelier the size of a small car. A grand staircase swept up to a second-floor gallery. It was beautiful, but it felt empty. It felt like a museum, not a home. "Rocco, have the perimeter checked again. Double the night shift," Leonard ordered over his shoulder as he guided Ivy toward the stairs. "Yes, boss." "Leonard, stop!" Ivy planted her feet, refusing to take the first step. He paused, looking down at her. He was on the first step, so he towered over her even more than usual. "What is it?" "I can't just move in here. I have a life. I have a cat. I have a shift tomorrow morning at 10. Leonard sighed, a sound of infinite patience. "Your cat, Barnaby, was picked up by my team an hour ago. He is currently eating fresh salmon in the kitchen. Your shift at the Gilded Lily has been covered. I bought your contract from Arthur. You are officially retired." Ivy felt the blood rush to her head. You stole my cat? You bought my job?" "I secured your pet, and I freed you from a job that didn't pay you enough to buy a winter coat without a hole in the pocket." He reached out, his fingers grazing the worn fabric of her jeans. "I'm not trying to control you, Ivy. I'm trying to elevate you." "That is the definition of control," Ivy snapped. "I worked hard for that life. It was mine." Leonard stepped down, closing the distance. The intensity in his eyes pinned her in place. "It was a life of survival. You were drowning, Ivy. You were working 3 jobs to pay for a mistake a man-child made. That isn't living. That is serving time." He took her hand, his grip firm but gentle. "Come. There is something you need to see." He led her up the stairs, down a long hallway, lined with oil paintings of stormy seas and dark forests. He stopped at a double door at the end of the hall and pushed it open. Ivy gasped. It was a bedroom, but it was larger than her entire apartment. A fire crackled in a limestone hearth. A 4-poster bed with sheer curtains dominated the center. But it wasn't the furniture that made her breath catch. It was the details. On the vanity sat her favorite brand of moisturizer, the expensive kind she only bought once a year on her birthday. On the bookshelf were first editions of the novels she had mentioned loving to a co-worker months ago. In the corner, on a velvet armchair, sat a vintage record player with a stack of jazz vinyls, the exact ones she used to listen to with her father before he passed. She walked into the room, touching the spine of a book, her fingers trembling. "How?" she whispered. "How do you know all this? You've never spoken to me until tonight." Leonard leaned against the doorframe, watching her. "I listen, Ivy. When you spoke to Arthur about your dad's record collection being sold to pay bills, I tracked it down. When you told the hostess you dreamed of a library with a ladder, I had the carpenter build the shelves in the study." He walked over to the record player and picked up a sleeve. "I didn't buy these things to buy you. I bought them to save them for you, because I knew, eventually, you would be here." Ivy turned to face him, tears pricking her eyes. It was overwhelming. It was borderline stalker behavior, yet every action was rooted in a terrifying sort of care. "You've been planning this? For how long?" "Since the first time I saw you pour a glass of wine and apologize to a rude customer for a mistake he made," Leonard said softly. 6 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days. He walked to a closet door and opened it. Inside hung rows of clothes, silks, cashmeres, wools, no waitress uniforms, no worn-out denim. "Sleep," Leonard commanded, stepping back. "The bathroom is through there. Everything you need is here. Lock the door if it makes you feel safer. I'll be down the hall." He turned to leave, but stopped with his hand on the doorknob. "And Ivy?" She looked at him, clutching the book to her chest. "Do not worry about Brad. By morning, he will be very far away, and very regretful." With that, the heavy door clicked shut, leaving Ivy alone in a room that was a shrine to her own dreams, built by a man who was essentially a stranger. She walked to the window and looked out at the dark forest. She was a prisoner. But as she touched the soft Egyptian cotton of the sheets, she realized she was a prisoner who had been cold for a very long time. And finally, the fire was warm. Morning came with a soft knock on the door. Ivy woke with a start, disoriented. For a second, she expected the peeling paint of her ceiling and the sound of her neighbors arguing. Instead, she saw a crystal chandelier and sunlight streaming through heavy velvet drapes. "Come in," she croaked. A middle-aged woman with a stern face and a grey bun entered, carrying a silver tray. "Good morning, Miss Sullivan. Mr. Vitti requested you have breakfast in bed, but he is waiting for you in the study when you are ready." "Thank you," Ivy said, sitting up. The tray held a perfect omelette, fresh fruit, and coffee that smelled like heaven. "What is your name?" "I am Martha," the woman said. "I run the household. If you need anything at all, you ask me." She paused, her stern face softening slightly. "It is nice to see this room used. He has kept it sealed for months." Ivy ate quickly, the reality of her situation setting in. She showered in a bathroom made of white marble and gold fixtures, then stood before the closet Leonard had filled. She refused to wear the gowns. She found a pair of simple black trousers and a cream cashmere sweater. It felt like armor. Soft, expensive armor. She found her way downstairs, following the sound of a low voice. She found Leonard in a study that smelled of leather and cigar smoke. He was sitting behind a massive desk, speaking rapidly into a phone. "I don't care what Miller says. The shipment is ours. If he touches the docks, burn them." He hung up the phone and looked up. His face, which had been hard and cruel a second ago, relaxed instantly when he saw her. "You look beautiful," he said. "Better than the apron." "We need to talk about the burning docks part," Ivy said, crossing her arms. "Leonard, I can't just stay here. I'm not a pet. I need to do something." Leonard stood up and walked around the desk. He was wearing a navy suit today, looking every inch the corporate shark, if corporate sharks carried concealed weapons. "You want to work?" he asked, amused. "Yes. I'm an editor. I have clients. I need my laptop." "Your laptop is on the desk over there." He pointed to a smaller, elegant writing desk in the corner. "I had it retrieved from your apartment, along with your hard drives." Ivy blinked. He really had thought of everything. "Okay, fine. But I can't stay cooped up in this house. I need fresh air." Leonard's expression darkened. "It is not safe, Ivy. Brad was a small fish. But by bringing you here, I have made a statement. My enemies will know you are my weakness now. They will target you. So I'm just supposed to hide forever?" "No," Leonard said, his jaw tightening. "You are not hiding. You are preparing. Tonight, there is a gala. The mayor's charity ball. I wasn't going to go. But now, I think it is time Chicago met the woman who holds my leash. I don't have anything to wear to a gala," Ivy said, panic fluttering in her chest. "Then we go shopping." The shopping trip was a military operation. They took the armored SUV. 2 black sedans followed them. They went to the Magnificent Mile, But instead of entering through the front doors, they were ushered into the private back entrances of the most exclusive boutiques. Ivy stood on a podium in front of a three-way mirror, wearing a gown of emerald green silk that clung to every curve. It was backless, daring, and incredibly expensive. Leonard sat on a velvet sofa behind her, sipping champagne, his eyes dark and appreciative. "That one?" he said. "It's $4,000, Ivy said, looking at the tag. "I could pay rent for 6 months with this." "You don't pay rent anymore," Leonard reminded her. "Turn around." She turned, his eyes locked onto the small bruise on her hip, visible through the high slit of the dress. His hand tightened on the champagne glass. "Does it hurt?" he asked softly. "The bruise?" "No, it's fading." "Good." He stood up, signaling the sales associate to wrap it up. "We'll take it, and the shoes, and the coat." As they were leaving the boutique, the air in the private alleyway changed. The security team suddenly tensed. Rocco put a hand to his earpiece. "Boss, we have eyes on a grey sedan, west end of the alley. It's been circling." Leonard grabbed Ivy's arm, pulling her behind his massive frame. "Get her in the car. Now." But before they could move, a man stepped out from the shadows of the loading dock. He wasn't Brad. He was older, with silver hair and a suit that looked as expensive as Leonard's. He held a cane, but he didn't look like he needed it. "Leonard," the man smiled, showing teeth that looked too sharp. "Shopping? How domestic." Leonard didn't move, but Ivy could feel the muscles in his arm turn to stone. "Grant," Leonard acknowledged coldly. "You're far from your territory. The South Side is that way." Grant Miller chuckled. He was the head of the rival syndicate, the only man in Chicago who dared to challenge the Vitti family. His eyes slid to Ivy. He looked her up and down, a slow, slimy appraisal that made her want to shower. "So this is the rumor," Grant said. "The waitress. Pretty thing. A bit fragile for a man like you, isn't she, Leonard? One squeeze and she might break." Leonard took a step forward. The air crackled with violence. "Look at her again, Grant, and you will lose the other eye." Grant touched the eye patch he wore on his left side, a souvenir from a war with Leonard's father years ago. He laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "Touchy. I just came to deliver a Christmas greeting, and to give the lady a gift." He reached into his pocket. Rocco and the other guards drew their guns instantly. 4 muzzles pointed at Grant's chest. Grant held up his hands mockingly. "Easy, boys. Just a card." He tossed a black envelope onto the snow-covered ground between them. "For you, my dear," Grant said to Ivy. "Open it when you get bored of playing house. It might tell you a few things about your new boyfriend that he forgot to mention." Grant stepped back into the shadows. "Merry Christmas, Vitti. Enjoy the gala tonight. I hear the fireworks will be spectacular." He disappeared. Leonard didn't look at the envelope. He ushered Ivy into the SUV, his grip bruising. "Go. Drive." As the car sped away, Ivy looked back. The black envelope lay in the snow, a dark stain on the pristine white. "What did he mean?" Ivy asked, her heart hammering. "What things?" Leonard didn't answer. He stared straight ahead, his face a mask of fury. But his hand found hers, squeezing so hard it almost hurt. "He is trying to poison you against me," Leonard said finally. "Grant Miller is a liar and a snake. Do not listen to the hiss." But the seed of doubt had been planted. Ivy looked at the profile of the man who had saved her, the man who had bought her a library and stolen her cat. He was powerful. He was protective. But he was also a killer. And as the car raced back toward the fortress, Ivy wondered if she was the queen of the castle, or just the most prized possession in the vault. The mayor's charity ball was held at the Navy Pier Grand Ballroom. It was a sea of black ties, glittering diamonds, and fake smiles. Ivy wore the emerald dress. Her hair was swept up, revealing the elegant line of her neck. A diamond choker, a real one this time, a gift from Leonard before they left, rested against her throat. She looked like she belonged, but she felt like an imposter. Leonard kept her close. His hand never left the small of her back. Every time a man looked at her for too long, Leonard stared him down until he looked away. It was intoxicating, being the center of such fierce attention. "Relax," Leonard whispered in her ear as they moved through the crowd. "You are the most beautiful woman here. Heads are turning because they are jealous, not because they are judging." Ivy took a sip of champagne. "Grant Miller said something about fireworks. Do you think he's going to try something here? With half the police force and the mayor present? No. Grant is arrogant, not stupid. He plays mind games." They were interrupted by the mayor himself, a jovial man who shook Leonard's hand with a bit too much enthusiasm, clearly aware of who actually ran the city. While Leonard was distracted talking politics, a waiter bumped into Ivy. "So sorry, madam," the waiter mumbled. He slipped a napkin into her hand. "You dropped this?" He walked away quickly before she could react. Ivy looked down. It wasn't a napkin. It was a folded note. She glanced at Leonard. He was deep in conversation. Her heart racing, she unfolded the paper. It was a photocopy of a document, a police report from 2 years ago. The report detailed a loan shark operation that had targeted low-income workers. The name of the victim listed was Ivy Sullivan. The name of the man who owned the loan company was listed as a shell corporation. And underneath, in handwriting she recognized from the black envelope earlier, were the words, "Who do you think bought Brad's debt in the first place? He didn't just find you, Ivy. He created the problem so he could be the savior." Ivy felt the room spin. The music became a distorted roar. Brad had borrowed money. The loan sharks had come after her. She had worked for 2 years to pay them back. If this note was true, Leonard owned the sharks. Leonard was the shark. He hadn't just watched her for 6 months. He had engineered her suffering. He had let her struggle, let her freeze, let her break, just so he could swoop in at the perfect moment and be the hero. "Ivy!" Leonard's voice broke through the haze. He was looking at her, concern etching his features. "You're pale. What is it?" She looked at him. Really looked at him. She saw the possessiveness in his eyes, not as love, but as ownership. "I need air," she gasped. "The bathroom. I just need a minute." "I'll escort you." "No!" She pulled away too sharply. People turned to look. I need a moment alone, Leonard. Please." He hesitated. He looked at the crowd, then at the restroom corridor which was guarded by event security. 5 minutes. If you are not out, I am coming in." Ivy nodded and fled. She pushed through the heavy doors of the ladies' lounge. It was empty. She rushed to the sink, splashing cold water on her face. He created the problem so he could be the savior. It made sick, twisted sense. Why else would a Mafia don notice a waitress? Unless he was the one pulling the strings of her misery all along. The door to the lounge opened. Ivy spun around, expecting a guest. It was Brad. But he wasn't the cocky Brad from the alley. He was bruised, his lip split, wearing a waiter's uniform that was too big for him. "Ivy," he hissed, "you have to listen to me." "Brad, what are you doing here? Leonard said you were gone. He tried to kill me." Brad's eyes were wild. "His men, they beat me. They told me to leave town, but I couldn't leave without telling you. Grant Miller, he saved me. He got me in here. Grant Miller is using you. Ivy backed away. Maybe. But he gave me the file. Brad pulled a stack of papers from his jacket. Look at it, Ivy. Leonard Vitti bought my debt 2 weeks after I left you. He could have wiped it clean. He could have told you. But he didn't. He let you work yourself to death for 2 years while he watched. He wanted you broken. He wanted you desperate. Ivy stared at the papers. The dates matched. He's a monster, Brad whispered. Come with me. Miller has a car outside. He can get us out of Chicago. We can start over. Ivy looked at Brad. Then she looked at the door where Leonard was waiting. Betrayal burned in her chest, hot and agonizing. Leonard had lied. He had manipulated her life like a chess game. Let's go, Ivy whispered. Brad grabbed her hand. He led her not out the main door, but through a service entrance in the back of the lounge. They hurried down a narrow concrete hallway, the sounds of the party fading. They burst out into the cold night air of the loading docks. A grey sedan was waiting, engine running. Grant Miller sat in the back seat, the window rolled down. Smart girl, Miller smiled. Get in. Ivy took a step toward the car, but then she stopped. She looked at the car. She looked at Brad, whose eyes were darting nervously to Miller. She looked at Miller's shark-like smile. Something was wrong. You said Leonard bought the debt 2 years ago, Ivy said slowly. He did, Brad urged. Get in the car, Ivy. But Leonard didn't know who I was 2 years ago, Ivy said, her voice gaining strength. He told me he saw me for the first time 6 months ago, at the restaurant. He lied, Brad shouted. No, Ivy stepped back. He might be a control freak. He might be dangerous. But he doesn't lie about details. He's obsessive. If he knew me 2 years ago, I would have been in that mansion 2 years ago. She looked at Miller. You forged the papers. Miller's smile vanished. Grab her. Brad lunged. Brad's hands were clammy as they clamped onto Ivy's arms. He wasn't a fighter. He was a desperate coward, which made him unpredictable. Don't make this hard, Ivy, Brad shouted, trying to drag her toward the open door of the grey sedan where Grant Miller waited like a spider in a web. I'm saving you. You're selling me, Ivy screamed. She didn't panic. Panic was for the old Ivy, the one who cried over unpaid bills. This Ivy had spent the last 24 hours in the presence of a predator, and she had learned a few things. She didn't pull away. Instead, she stepped into Brad's space, driving the heel of her $4,000 stiletto down onto the bridge of his foot with all her strength. Brad shrieked, his grip loosening just enough. Ivy twisted her body, using the momentum to shove him backward. He stumbled on the icy concrete, falling hard onto his back. Get her! Miller barked from the car, his composure cracking. He fumbled for something inside his jacket, a gun. But before Miller could raise the weapon, the metal service door behind Ivy exploded outward. It didn't just open, it was kicked with such force that the heavy steel warped against the concrete wall. Leonard Vitti stepped onto the loading dock. He wasn't the polished gentleman from the ballroom anymore. He was pure, unadulterated rage. His tie was gone, his collar unbuttoned. Behind him stood Rocco and 3 other men, weapons drawn and leveled instantly at the car. Grant! Leonard's voice was a thunderclap that seemed to shake the snow from the roof. Drop it, or I will paint this dock with your brains. Miller froze. He looked at the 4 guns pointed at his head, then at Leonard, who was walking toward him, unarmed, but looking far more dangerous than his men. Miller slowly raised his hands, letting his pistol clatter to the ground. You're fast, Vitti, Miller sneered, though his eyes darted nervously to the exits. But you're too late. The girl knows what you are. You can't keep a pet who knows you starved her just to feed her. Leonard didn't look at Miller. He walked straight to Ivy. He didn't ask if she was okay. He scanned her body for injuries with a terrifying precision. When he saw her unscathed, he positioned himself in front of her, blocking her completely from Miller's view. "Rocco," Leonard said calmly, "put Mr. Halloway in the trunk of our car. We have a delivery to make to the police station. Fraud, embezzlement, and attempted kidnapping should keep him warm for a decade." "No, wait!" Brad scrambled backward on the ground, Crab walking away from Rocco. "I helped you. Miller, you said you'd protect me." Miller laughed, a cruel, dry sound. "You were bait, kid. Bait gets eaten." Rocco grabbed Brad by the collar of his ill-fitting waiter's jacket and dragged him away, ignoring his sobbing pleas. Leonard turned his attention to Miller, who was still sitting in the back of the sedan. "You forged a document," Leonard said. "You tried to turn her against me with a lie about dates." "It worked, didn't it?" Miller smirked. For a minute there, she looked ready to run. "You'll never trust her again, Leonard. And she'll never trust you. I've poisoned the well." "She didn't get in the car," Leonard corrected him softly. "She did the math. She figured out your lie. That is why she is my queen, and you are just a petty thief with a cane." Miller's face twisted in anger. "I still have the docs, Vitty. My shipment comes in tonight. While you're here playing bodyguard, my men are securing the biggest weapons deal in Chicago history. You lose." Leonard checked his watch. "Actually, Grant, you might want to check the news." "What?" "The fireworks," Leonard said, a dark smile playing on his lips. "You promised Ivy fireworks." At that exact moment, a dull, booming roar echoed from the distance, coming from the direction of the harbor. The sky to the south lit up with a brilliant orange glow. It wasn't festive fireworks. It was an explosion. Miller's phone began to ring frantically. He stared at the orange glow reflecting in the snow, his face draining of color. "My warehouse," Miller whispered. "Your illegal munitions warehouse," Leonard corrected. "I tipped off the feds an hour ago, and then I had my men rig the gas main just in case the feds were slow. It seems the gas main went first." Leonard leaned down, resting his hands on the open window of the sedan, inches from Miller's face. "You are finished, Grant. You have no stock. You have no money. And after tonight, the Commission will strip you of your territory for bringing heat like this down on the city. You are a king without a kingdom." Miller looked at Leonard with pure hatred, but the fear was stronger. He had lost everything in a single night. "Get out of my city," Leonard whispered. He straightened up and signaled his men. "Let him go. He's nobody now." Miller's driver didn't wait for an order. He slammed the car into gear and peeled out of the loading dock, tires screeching, leaving Miller defeated in the back seat, driving away from the burning ruins of his empire. Silence descended on the loading dock. The only sound was the distant sirens wailing toward the harbor. Leonard turned to Ivy. The rage evaporated, leaving behind a raw vulnerability that terrified her more than the violence. "You didn't get in the car," he said. It was a question, a statement, and a prayer all at once. "The dates didn't match," Ivy said, her voice trembling as the adrenaline crashed. "I knew you were obsessive, but I knew you weren't a liar." Leonard closed his eyes for a second, letting out a breath he seemed to have been holding for hours. He reached out, his hand hovering near her face, waiting for permission. Ivy didn't pull away. She leaned into his touch. "Take me home," she whispered. The ride back to the estate was different this time. There was no tension of the unknown. Ivy sat close to Leonard, her head resting on his shoulder. He held her hand in both of his, rubbing his thumb over her knuckles, as if checking they were still there. When they arrived, the house was quiet. The staff had retired. The fire in the library was still burning, merely embers now. Leonard led her into the library. He poured 2 glasses of brandy and handed her one. "I need to show you something," he said. He walked to the safe behind his desk. He spun the dial and pulled out a thick file folder. He placed it on the desk between them. "Miller lied about the dates," Leonard said, staring at the folder. "But he didn't lie about the debt." Ivy's heart skipped a beat. She set her glass down. "Open it." She opened the folder. Inside was the original loan agreement Brad had signed, and clipped to the front was a transfer of ownership document. Leonard Vitti had purchased the debt 3 days ago. "I didn't own you for 2 years, Ivy," Leonard said, his voice rough. "I found out about the debt last week, when I did a background check on you." "Why did you wait?" Ivy asked. "You bought it 3 days ago. You could have told me. You could have walked into the restaurant and said, 'You're free.'" Leonard walked around the desk and stood before her. He looked tortured. "Because I didn't want to buy you like a piece of property," he admitted. "I wanted you to leave him. I wanted you to leave the job. I watched you, hoping every day that you would snap, that you would realize you deserved better. I wanted to save you, Ivy, but I needed you to want to be saved." He paced the room, running a hand through his hair. "But then that package arrived, that insult of a gift, and I saw the look on your face, the fear, and I realized I couldn't wait anymore. I realized that if I didn't step in, that idiot would drag you down with him. So I broke my own rule. I interfered." He stopped pacing and looked at her. "I'm a bad man, Ivy. I do terrible things. I blew up a building tonight. I ruined a man's life. And I would do it all again without blinking if it meant keeping you safe." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. It wasn't the gaudy red box from Brad. It was sleek, black leather. "I said you only accept gifts from me," Leonard said softly. "But gifts come with strings. My gifts come with chains. If you take this, you are tying yourself to a monster. But this monster will burn the world down before he lets you shiver." He opened the box. Inside sat a pendant. It was a single, flawless emerald, cut in the shape of a teardrop, suspended on a delicate platinum chain. It was simple, elegant, and worth more than the entire restaurant she used to work in. "Brad gave you fake gold and glass because he wanted you to look expensive," Leonard said. "I give you this because it matches your eyes when you fight back." Ivy looked at the necklace. Then she looked at the man holding it. She thought about her cold apartment. She thought about the fear of the landlord. She thought about the lonely nights, wondering if anyone would ever see her, really see her. Leonard saw her. He saw the bruises, the debts, the favorite books, the hidden strength. He was dangerous, yes, but he was hers. She reached out and took the necklace from the box. She turned around, lifting her hair. "Put it on," she said. She heard Leonard's sharp intake of breath. His warm hands brushed her neck as he fastened the clasp. The cool metal settled against her skin, a heavy, grounding weight. He kissed the sensitive spot just below her ear, sending shivers down her spine. "You are mine, Ivy," he whispered against her skin. She turned in his arms, looking up into his dark, possessive eyes. She didn't see a monster. She saw a king who had finally found his queen. "And you are mine, Leonard," she replied firmly. "So, no more secrets. If we burn the world, we burn it together." Leonard smiled, a real, genuine smile that transformed his face. He picked her up effortlessly, carrying her toward the stairs, leaving the cold, the debt, and the past behind in the dying embers of the fire. Ivy Sullivan had lost her job, her apartment, and her ex-boyfriend in 24 hours. But as she buried her face in Leonard's neck, she knew she had won the only thing that mattered. She had won a life where she would never be cold again. Ivy looked out the window as the city lights blurred past, realizing her life had changed forever in the span of a single hour. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was the obsession of the most dangerous man in the city. The fear was there, yes, but so was a strange, intoxicating sense of safety. Brad was gone, a ghost exorcised by a king. As Leonard's hand found hers in the darkness of the car, firm and unyielding, she didn't pull away. She realized that some cages were made of gold, and maybe, just maybe, she didn't want the key. What would you do if a mafia boss claimed you were his? Would you run, or would you stay for the protection? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a twist. See you in the next video.